All right, we're going to continue with section 1.7, and this is still going to be under your quadratics. So, your third example under your quadratics, let's do 2x squared minus 9x is less than or equal to 18. Okay, so we talked about on Tuesday with the quadratics, you do know you're going to have to factor. So first off, I need to make 18 move over with the rest, and when I do that, it becomes a negative 18, and then we set it to 0. And so when we factor, there is no GCF. We are subtracting to get that negative 9. So we're going to do our 2 parentheses. And in the front, we have nothing but 2 and 1. Now with 18, you know we got 1 and 18, 2 and 9, and what, 3 and 6? So if we're trying to subtract to get 9, what we're using 3 and 6. And 6 has to be with the x, good. And just take your time and make sure this is going to work. That makes 12x and 3x. If you subtract it, yep, that'll make 9. Now your 9 is negative, so that means who has to be negative? My 6, which is 12, good. My 3 is going to be positive. Very good. And like I said, it's real important to make sure you got those signs right. So make sure you check it because you don't want to give the wrong 2 numbers. So once it's factored, we're going to take each parenthesis and set it to the inequality at 0. And then I tell y'all about and ors. Shading in the middle versus shading on the outside. Did I mention that? Okay, good. So once we solve, let me not get ahead of myself, divided by 2, we got x is less than or equal to negative 3 over 2. And x is less than or equal to positive 6. And from the beginning, with this being a less than sign, it's supposed to shade where? Less than means middle. Greater than means what? Outside, okay? Keep that little nugget of information in your mind because that'll help if the whole test in the number line is confusing, okay? Like I said, nothing that we do is 100%, but on all the problems you're going to work, this will work, okay? So, number line, we're going to put negative 3 over 2 first and then positive 6. And I told you it's supposed to shade in the middle, but if you wanted to test your number line, and 0 is an easy plug-in, what space would you be testing? Where would 0 be? In the middle. So if you go back up to the original and you test 0, that would mean you have 0 on the whole left side. Is it less than 18? Yes, it's true. So that proves the reason why you're going to shade in the middle. That's where your answer is. Does it make sense? Now, what symbols are we going to put on both of our numbers? Brackets, good. So you got open bracket toward the shade. And so your notation, your interval, will match your shade. So it's going to start with bracket, negative 3/2, comma 6 bracket. Very good. Do y'all see that? Okay. Number 4. Y'all good with number 3? Number 4. 3x squared plus x is greater than 4. Okay, what we're going to do first? Move 4 over, make it negative, and then we're going to just straight factor. We're subtracting to get that understood 1 in the middle. So we're going to put in the front our only option, 3 and 1, 3x and 1x. And in the back, you have 2 options, but I hope you see if you got a 3 and you got a 4, they together going to make 1 if you subtract. So I'm going to put 4 and 1 as my choice as the back. And again, I will check that just to make sure. That gives you 3x and a 4x, which, yes, subtracts to 1. But make sure the signs are right. If 1 is positive, who has to be positive? 3 or 4? 4. Good. The 3 is negative, your 4 is positive. So once it's factored, you're going to take each parenthesis, set it to the inequality at 0. So that's going to give us x is greater than a negative 4/3, and x is greater than positive who? 1. Now, I didn't say, but I should have from the beginning. This was a greater than sign. You noticed that at the very beginning. So where should my shade be? On the outside. Good. It should be on the outside. So when you do your number line, you're going to put negative 4/3 and then positive 1. And like I said, if you wanted to test, and I would test 0, you would be testing the middle. And if you go back to the original and test 0, that whole left side is going to be 0. Do you agree? Is 0 greater than 4? No, it's false. So it must be true on the outsides. That proves why I said the outsides. Does that make sense? And what symbols are going to be on our numbers? Parentheses. Very good. Okay. So how does our interval start? This one's a little long. Negative infinity. Okay. Negative 4/3. Parentheses. And what goes in between? You got to put that union for you. Good. Then parentheses 1 to positive infinity. Very good. Please make sure y'all know that union, that U brings the 2 shaded pieces together, because you got a hole in your graph. Your answer is not in between negative 4/3 and 1. Okay, so it's like you're skipping over it. So you got to put that symbol there to show that. Do y'all see that? And that's the basis of a quadratic. You just got to remember, you just got to factor it. Factor it, and then you test the number line. However, if you remember less than middle, greater than outside, that would help with the whole testing. Okay? Now the next and our last type of inequalities are going to be the rationals. And I'm just going to touch on these. These are the rationals. X minus 3 over x plus 5 is less than or equal to 0. Now, I mentioned in my Monday, Wednesday class that with rationals and what I just told y'all, the whole less than, middle, greater than, outside, you do know in algebra, there's always an exception to the rule, okay? And that exception would come under rationals. But I have decided not to even go there. Those problems, when we do rationals, because this is not something we focus a lot on, meaning it's not going to carry into something else. Does that make sense? So I'm just going to show you a basic rational. If I was to go deeper, then that would be the exception to my middle, less than middle, greater than outside rule. Does that make sense? So I do want you to know that that's not the case for everything that we do that's got a inequality sign in it. But the ones that I am going to show, which are the basic ones, that whole statement will work on these, okay? And like I said, the reason I'm not going to go so deep on the rational, and I have in the past, but it's just no point. We're not going any further with this in college algebra. Does that make sense? So a basic rational, and keep in mind rational means fraction. Fraction, and in this case, you got to be careful because x is on the bottom. And we talked about that in R7 on our review section. When you have x on the bottom of a fraction, you got to be mindful that if you solving for x, you can't let x equal a number that's going to make that bottom turn to what? 0. That's like cardinal rule. That's something you just got to know in any math class dealing with x's. You can't let the bottom, if x is down there, you can't let it turn to a number that's going to make it 0 out, okay? So with that being said, when I solve this, I'm going to take the top. This is the easy way of telling you how to solve it. I'm going to take the top and set it to the inequality and the bottom and set it to the inequality. That only works when it's at 0, okay? So I'm telling you the easy way, okay? Because that's not the mathematical term on how to solve this, okay? You're going to take the top and you're going to take the bottom to get your two answers, okay? Now, when you do that, you should know by now when you set something to 0, you get its opposite. Do y'all notice that? When we've been setting those parentheses to 0, we get the opposite. So that would give us x is less than 3 and x is less than or equal to -5. That's what I mean by the opposite. Now, if you go back and look at the original, who can x not be? -5, right? You can't let it equal -5. Now, because this is a less than or equal to sign, you have a situation. You got a problem. Because right here, you're saying that x can equal -5. Do you see that? Just because of that symbol. Now, when you go to actually do your number line and write your interval, you got to remember, the responsibility is given back to y'all, that x can't equal no -5. Now, it can be less than it, but it can't equal direct out -5. So you're going to have to remember that, okay, I'm going to have to really just make this one a less than sign. It can't have the equal on it, okay? Because when you go to do your graph and your interval, that's going to determine you putting a bracket versus a parenthesis. And I got to remember, you got to remember that because that number comes off the bottom, you can't let that one have a bracket on it. Okay? This problem is always used on our final exam. Because not saying, I told you, our final exam, I don't make it out, our department makes it out. They like to challenge to see if you're going to remember the little stuff. This problem is on there. It's on there every semester. And students miss it because your final exam is multiple choice. And the multiple choice answers all look alike. So they will have the answer to this with the bracket and one with the parentheses. And most students going to pick the one with the bracket because just by looking at it, that's what you would think. But you got to remember that the bottom can't have a bracket. The bottom has to have a parenthesis. And I just want to stress that to you because that's going to be key if I give you an equal bar under it. Does that make sense? Now, when you do your number line, now all of that's the same from prior. You're going to put -5, you're going to do 3, and I told you if this is less than, it's supposed to shade where? In the middle. So if we're looking And if you want to test, you can. I'm going to go ahead and shade the middle. But if I wanted to test a number, and I told you 0 is just my prime pick, I would be testing where? The middle? So if you went back up and plugged in 0, you would get negative what, 3/5? Is negative 3/5 less than 0? Yes, so it's true. Does that make sense? Now this is where I'm going to make sure we understand. When it goes to these symbols, what must be on -5? A parenthesis. And what's on +3? A bracket. So our interval would be parenthesis -5, comma 3 with a bracket. X plus 1 over x minus 4 is greater than 0. And so, since it says 0, I'm giving y'all the simple one. So I'm giving you like the shortcut. If it's set at 0, you just take the top and set it, and the bottom and what? And set it to 0. Now let me ask you this. Do you have a situation with this one? Why? You don't even have an equal sign. Very good. You don't have no situation. I don't want you to think they all. You just got to be cautious when they got an equal bar. This one don't even have an equal bar. So it don't even matter because they are going to be parentheses anyways. Does that make sense? Good. So we got x is greater than what? -1 and 4. So when you throw it on that number line, how is this one supposed to shape? Outside. Good. This one's supposed to go to the outside. However, if you wanted to test 0, it would be test in the middle again. And so that would make us have a -1/4. Is -1/4 greater than 0? No, it's false. So that proves why it's on the outside. And our symbols again are parentheses. Good. So what's that notation?
Parentheses, comma, -1, parentheses, union, parentheses, 4, comma, positive.
Very good. Y'all see that? Questions? Not too bad. No.